Stories of Great Christians. From its radio studios in Chicago, the Moody Bible Institute greets its friends everywhere with Chapter 25 in the transcribed story of Florence Nightingale, the Lady with the Lamp. Florence Nightingale returned from Scutari thin, worn, and exhausted. Now at last she'd be ready to settle down at home, her family thought. But Florence had no intention of resting. She'd come home from the fields of war, haunted by dreams of dying men who never should have died at all.
Well, Florence, you look a little better this morning. But you're very thin. You're going to need a long rest and plenty of food and fresh air.
Don't you fret. We'll have Florence filled out again in no time. A nice long stay at Lea Hurst.
I'm sorry, Mama, but I'm not going to stay at Lea Hurst.
But if you're not going to stay at Lea Hurst, where are you going to stay?
I'm going to London.
To London?
In this heat?
Oh, I think London will be very bad for your health. I know we can't dictate what you should do, but considering your physical condition...
If I could stay here, I would, but I can't.
But why can't you? What takes you to London?
How long do you intend to stay there?
You may as well give up all thought of my being here for a long time. London is the center of activity, and that's where I have to be. And it's urgent. I must go at once.
What do you plan to do?
Well, that's the thing. I scarcely know myself. All I know is that I must strike while the iron's hot.
While the iron's hot?
Before people have forgotten Scutari. Before they've forgotten the Crimean War and all that it stands for. So I went to London and to the Burlington, the dingy old Burlington. It was a hot summer, and I was less strong to endure than I'd ever been. Often I lay on a sofa, unable to speak or eat. But after a time, God rewarded my efforts. I was called to confer with no one less than Queen Victoria herself. Our meeting and discussion were completely satisfactory.
I've been most impressed by your story, Miss Nightingale. You're quite right to say that our system is to blame for the major part of the deaths in the Crimean War, and now I want you to outline your plan for changing that system.
Your Majesty is kind.
No. As a first-hand observer, you have a right to make proposals, so go ahead and tell me your plans.
Well, I guess I should start with first things first. I believe that a study should be made of the old system first. This would pave the way for a change.
No, that sounds logical. It would require appointing a commission, of course.
If only we could persuade Lord Panmure to appoint one, a commission with very broad powers. Part of it should be what I call a wiping committee.
Oh, a wiping committee?
It should be empowered to look into everything regarding health and sanitary conditions in the army. And it should have the right to suggest changes in any and all departments.
I see what you mean. In order to make way for the new, the old organization will have to be wiped out. Well, a little lady called Florence Nightingale might persuade Lord Panmure. I'm going to see that he meets you.
It seems that the Queen found Lord Panmure more difficult than she had anticipated. He accepted her suggestion, but had his doubts about me, which he expressed privately.
Yes, who hasn't heard about Florence Nightingale? Looks now as though she wants to mix in politics. Well, it's little wonder a woman with her fame and position would naturally get ambitious.
Nevertheless, Panmure came to meet me. The Queen again helped out by sending him a letter of mine, outlining the scope of the discussion we hoped to have. Lord Panmure was an odd-appearing old gentleman, with a crop of thick, bristly hair, and a habit of moving his head from side to side that had earned him the nickname the Bison. He was notorious as a procrastinator, and above anything else hated stirring up trouble. Nevertheless, he was a man of character, and I had hopes of accomplishing things through him. We met in the home of Sir James Clark.
I've been looking forward to meeting the famous heroine of the Crimea.
Well, I've been looking forward to meeting you, even more earnestly, I think. Since the future is much more important than the past, and since you are dealing in the future, it's your decisions that count now.
Oh, you're very generous, Miss Nightingale. I'm sure your voice will also be heard in time to come.
Oh, all this business and publicity means nothing to me, Lord Panmure, but the future of the British Army certainly does.
I understand that you have great plans for the health division of our fighting service.
Well, I do have some thoughts on the subject. It would seem that now that we've muddled through another war, everyone would like to forget the vermin-devoured skeletons that perished in the struggle.
There is a tendency to forget, yes.
But I can never forget. I came to feel almost like a mother to those men. And I saw my children dressed in a dirty blanket and an old pair of regimental trousers, while people at home dressed their children in silks and velvets. I saw my children fed on raw salt meat, and 9,000 of them are lying from preventable causes in forgotten graves.
We must see to it that their sacrifice is not forgotten.
If it is, my lord, the real tragedy will have begun after the war.
The Queen writes that you have a plan for reform.
Yes, I have. We need a commission, first of all, to look into things like the sanitary order of the barracks, the need for an army medical school, and medical statistics. Besides, there should be a committee to revise all existing organizations.
You're a very convincing young lady, Miss Nightingale. I'm inclined to give you a commission, as you request.
I sincerely desire it only for the good of the army.
I'm sure you do. From the letter, I gathered you had someone in mind as a chairman of this commission.
Well, I'm convinced that no one could do the work more effectively than Sidney Herbert. He's already pledged to reform in the War Department.
You're quite right there. Do you think Mr. Herbert would accept the job?
Oh, I think so. At any rate, I expect to see him very soon, and I think I might help to persuade him. Mr. Herbert, someone is going to have to drag this thing through. Setting up a commission, as you know, is useless unless it's made to function.
And don't you think I've already done enough? I've already given several years to the War Department. I've had some heartbreaking experiences. You may not know, but a man in politics always sleeps on a bed of thorns.
Oh, I'm not trying to say that it's easy. I've seen already that it will be a long, hard fight. But you're the one man with the position and influence to put it through. It's my frank opinion that if you don't do it, it will never be done.
You estimate me highly.
But I don't overestimate you.
Suppose I went into it. You know that there's a good chance that we might fail. We have to deal with Panmure. And that man has a genius for putting things off and doing nothing.
We must make him work.
Well, if anyone can make him, I guess you can. You know, Sir James' son said that you won Panmure over completely. After the interview, he declared that Panmure's mane was positively silky, and that a loving sadness pervaded his whole being.
Well, I didn't expect my statistics and ideas to get that result, but I'm thankful if they did.
So, maybe you can make Panmure act. I have to confess that I have a terrible sense of duty about the affair anyway. And I guess if he asks me, I'll have to go ahead and accept.
Panmure became very evasive. He began to realize that explosive issues were involved and wished to avoid bother. I wrote, hinting, pleading, urging. Weeks passed, and no official notice was taken regarding the commission. Then a tide of public opinion carried the day. McNeil and Tulloch, the investigators of the disgraceful Crimean disaster, began to speak and publish the results of their finding. Crowds protested the bad treatment of our troops. In the House of Commons, Sidney Herbert moved that McNeil and Tulloch be rewarded for revealing the inefficiency and mismanagement in the War Department. The motion was carried without a dissenting vote. Queen Victoria decorated the two men, bestowing high honors for their distinguished service. Lord Panmure felt himself caught in the tide of reform and came to the Burlington to settle final details about the commission.
Sidney Herbert, I'm happy to say, has accepted the chairmanship.
Oh, I'm so glad, Lord Panmure.
And I've decided to adopt your suggestions regarding the other members of this commission also. There's been some criticism of your list in my offices, but it comes from men who want to preserve the old ways.
And the old ways must go.
That seems to be the verdict of the country.
Then you're ready to issue the official notice of the appointment of the commission.
Already. In a week or two, they should be in a position to begin work.
Lord Panmure, you've done the country a great service. Let me be the first to thank you.
No, don't. I believe the country owes its thanks to Florence Nightingale.
This commission functioned for many years under Florence's close guidance. During that time, scores of valuable reforms were introduced into the health department of the British Army. In the years of service which followed, God miraculously spared her life, though it was despaired of 100 times. She was possessed by the determined will to live and to do. She reached her 50s, 60s, 70s, and still she kept at the tasks she felt God had called her to accomplish. Florence Nightingale was 91 when she fell into a deep sleep from which she was never to waken. And after several weeks of silence, while all England waited on tiptoe, she died. At her funeral, she was accorded the highest honors by the nation she'd served so well. It was Florence Nightingale's faith that inspired a new concept of the soldier as a man of courage, worthy of all honor and care and consideration. It was Florence Nightingale's persistence in the face of bitter opposition and selfish complacence that created a new field of service for women all over the world, dedicated to the art and science of healing. On the profession of nursing is forever indelibly imprinted the picture of a strong, sympathetic, determined woman, Florence Nightingale, the Lady with the Lamb. And so we conclude the final chapter in the transcribed story of Florence Nightingale, the Lady with the Lamp. The script was written by Thelma Hamilton. The part of Florence Nightingale was played by Mary Skoll. Others in the cast included Stuart Fettis, Walter Carlson, Rex Brenner, Mary Lou Moore, Al Campbell, Ed Roney, Myron Kennedy, and Bill Pierce. Sound effects were by John Mendel Jr., music by Dick Anthony, engineer was Carl Haplinger, and the entire production was under the direction of Joyce Knight Blackburn. This was another in the series of Stories of Great Christians which came to you from the radio studios of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.